Have you ever stood at the edge of a decision, heart pounding, certain, absolutely certain, that it's time to change something in your life? Maybe it was a relationship you needed to leave, a job that was draining the life out of you. Or maybe it was something more personal, like letting go of an old habit, a way of thinking, or a story you've told yourself for far too long. You felt the pull, you knew the reasons, and still, you didn't do it. Why is that? Why do we, as human beings, so often resist the very changes that we know are good for us? Today, we're diving into a topic that touches every single one of us. Whether you're 18 or 80, change is a constant, and so is resistance. We're going to explore this through the lens of a powerful book, How We Change and 10 Reasons Why We Don't, by Ross Ellenhorn. A title that sounds simple, but trust me, it's anything but. Now don't worry, I'm not just going to list 10 reasons like a boring book report. No, today we're going to go on a journey. Through stories, analogies, a little psychology, and some personal reflection, I want to take you to the heart of why change is so hard and how we can begin to break through. So grab a cup of tea, settle in, and let's begin with a story. Her name is Maya. She's 29. She's been in the same town, in the same relationship, in the same job for 7 years. She wakes up each morning with a lump in her throat. Not sadness, exactly. Not fear, just that quiet, gnawing sensation that she's stuck. One day, she books a ticket to another city. A job offer, a clean slate. She tells her friends. She smiles, says she's excited. But the night before she's supposed to leave, she cancels the trip. She tells everyone it was a sign. The timing wasn't right. But deep down she knows the truth. She couldn't go. She didn't feel ready. Sound familiar? That story, Maya's story, is one I've heard over and over again. And maybe, if you're honest, you've lived some version of it too. So what stopped her? Ross Ellenhorn would tell us, it wasn't just fear, it wasn't laziness, and it wasn't because she didn't want to change, it was because of something deeper, something wired into our psychology. You see, here's the twist. We think change is about motivation, but Ellenhorn argues it's more about survival. Let me explain. As human beings, we're wired to preserve the known. Even if the known is painful, even if the known is toxic, even if the known is killing us slowly, it's still familiar. And familiarity feels safe. Why? Because our brains are essentially ancient alarm systems. And one of their biggest rules is this: better the devil you know than the devil you don't. This is where Ellenhorn's work begins to shine. He suggests that when people resist change, it's not a sign of failure, it's actually a sign of strength. Let me say that again. Resisting change can be a sign of strength. Why? Because to change is to leave a world you've adapted to, a world where you know the rules, even if they're unfair, and to step into uncertainty where nothing is guaranteed. Ellenhorn compares this resistance to the same mechanism that helps us survive in dangerous environments. It's not about being stuck, it's about being safe. But here's the beautiful paradox. In protecting ourselves from danger, we sometimes protect ourselves from growth. So, let's return to Maya. Maybe she wasn't weak, maybe she wasn't indecisive. Maybe she was doing the most human thing possible, trying to survive the unknown. And that brings us to the heart of today's video. We're going to explore the 10 reasons why we resist change, according to Ellenhorn. But more than that, we're going to bring them to life. We're going to connect them to real moments and real stories. like Maya's. Because by understanding why we don't change, we can start to build a roadmap for how we do. And just in case you're thinking, oh, this is just about psychology, no, this is about you, about your dreams, your habits, your fears, and your future. So if you've ever asked yourself, why can't I just do it already? Why do I keep falling back into old patterns? Or is it even possible to change at this point? Stick around. You're not broken, you're not lazy, you're human. And that's exactly where we'll begin. Now that we understand why change can feel so terrifying, why our brains sometimes cling to the familiar like it's a life raft, we're ready to dig deeper. Ross Ellenhorn, in his brilliant and compassionate book, lays out 10 psychological and emotional barriers that keep us from changing, even when we want to. Let's walk through them, not like a lecture, but like you and I are sitting down for a real conversation, maybe on a quiet afternoon, just trying to figure out why we do what we do. The first reason? We believe change threatens our survival. Now, I know what you're thinking. Come on, it's not life or death. But in our emotional brains, it can feel that way. Here's the deal. If you've been surviving in a certain environment, let's say a tough childhood, a high-pressure job, or even a relationship where you've had to walk on eggshells, then you've developed strategies to cope. And those strategies become your identity. To leave that behind? It's like saying goodbye to the version of you that kept you alive. So yeah, it feels risky, and your brain says, nope, better to stay safe. Number 2 is a big one. We fear losing control. Think about the last time you tried to start something new. Going to the gym, starting therapy, even moving cities. What if it doesn't work out? What if I fail? What if I embarrass myself? Ellenhorn says we often stay stuck because staying stuck gives us the illusion of control. We know how this version of the story goes, even if we hate it. He wants to start a YouTube channel. He's got the gear. He's got the ideas. But every time he gets close to uploading, he stops. Why? Because once you step into change, you're exposed. You're vulnerable. And vulnerable can feel a lot like powerless. So we stay in control by staying where we are. Now here's one that might surprise you. Hope can be painful. Yes, hope. That shiny, beautiful thing we're always told to hold on to. But here's what Ellenhorn reveals. For some of us, hoping feels dangerous, because every time we've hoped in the past, we've been let down. Hope, when it goes unfulfilled, becomes its own kind of trauma. So instead of hoping that change will make life better, we cut off hope altogether. We say things like, people never change. Why bother? This is just who I am. It's not that we're cynical. It's that we're protecting ourselves from heartbreak. Reason 4 cuts deep. We've internalized the idea that we're broken. Maybe you've been labeled lazy, unmotivated, dramatic, disorganized. Maybe someone told you, flat out, you'll never change. Or maybe it wasn't words. It was just the way people looked at you when you messed up. And over time, you started to believe them. When you think you're the problem, then any effort to change feels doomed from the start. Why try if I'm just going to fail again? That's not laziness. That's shame. And shame is one of the most paralyzing emotions a human can carry. Let's sit with this one for a moment. Change isn't just about what you gain, it's about what you lose. To change is to grieve. You grieve the comfort of the known. You grieve the person you were. You even grieve the story you told yourself. no matter how painful it was. Remember Maya from part 1? When she canceled her move, it wasn't just about fear, it was about loss. She was losing the identity she'd spent years building. Even if it was time to let it go, letting go still hurts. Every time we change, we say goodbye to something. And sometimes we're not just afraid of change. We're mourning the end of what we thought life would be. That grief, it deserves space. And if you've ever felt sad or even depressed after making a big change, know this: that's not a failure. That's part of the process. So now you've seen 5 of the 10 reasons, 5 ways we resist change, not because we're weak, but because we're wired to protect ourselves from what feels like danger, loss, and heartbreak. Let's pause here. Because the question I want you to ask isn't just, why don't I change? It's, what am I protecting? What hurts am I carrying? What stories have I believed for too long? And most importantly, what might be possible if I gave myself permission to heal? We've talked about fear. We've talked about grief. We've talked about survival instincts and how our past can hold our future hostage. Now it's time to complete the circle. Let's walk through the final 5 reasons Ross Ellenhorn gives us. 5 more layers of resistance we carry within us. Not as flaws, but as clues. Clues that help us understand ourselves. Clues that point the way toward real, lasting change. Here's one that doesn't get talked about enough. Sometimes we don't change because we're afraid we'll lose people. Imagine this. You've grown up in a family where nobody talks about feelings. Now you're starting therapy, learning how to set boundaries, express emotions, name your needs. Sounds great, right? But then your family pulls back. Friends start saying, "You've changed." And suddenly, you're faced with a heartbreaking choice: stay the same or risk being alone. Ross Ellenhorn says that many people stay in unhealthy patterns not because they like them, but because those patterns keep them connected. It's a tragic paradox. We sacrifice growth for belonging. But here's the truth. Real connection never asks you to shrink. Yes, some people may walk away when you change. But the ones who remain, and the ones who come into your life after, will see the real you and love that person, not the mask you wore to survive. Next, Ellenhorn points out something tender and painful. We don't change because we don't trust ourselves to handle what comes next. This isn't about being lazy. This is about self-betrayal. Those moments in life when you made a promise to yourself and broke it. Maybe you've said things like, "I always mess things up. I can't stick with anything. Why bother trying?" But let me offer you something different. You didn't fail. You were doing the best you could with the resources you had at the time. Ellenhorn gently reminds us, you are more capable than you've been allowed to believe. And the first step to change might be simply this: learning how to trust yourself again. Number 8 is a quiet one, but powerful. We don't change because we're afraid we'll be disappointed. Not just in others, but in ourselves. Think of it like this. If you never try, then you never have to deal with the heartbreak of not succeeding. It's a defense mechanism. And ironically, it feels wise, cautious, practical. But here's the catch. When you protect yourself from disappointment, you also protect yourself from discovery, from surprise, from joy, from becoming the person you were always meant to be. This one's common and brutal. It's too late for me. Ellenhorn hears it from clients all the time. And maybe you've heard it in your own head too. Maybe you're 20 or 60 or 80, and you think, if I haven't changed by now, I never will. Let me tell you something. There is no expiration date on transformation. You are not a carton of milk. You are a living, breathing story. And stories evolve until the very last chapter. Whether you're changing your habits, your career, your relationships, or your self-image, it is never too late to rewrite the ending. And finally, perhaps the most haunting reason of all, we don't change because we don't know who will be on the other side. Ellenhorn describes this as identity vertigo. We cling to pain, to habits, to chaos, because even if they hurt us, they define us. If I stop being the caregiver, the overachiever, the victim, the perfectionist, who am I then? This question is terrifying, but also full of promise. Because here's the truth. You get to find out. You get to become someone new. Not overnight, not all at once, but slowly, deliberately, authentically. Change isn't about becoming a different person. It's about becoming more of yourself. So, what now? What do we do with all of this? We understand the resistance. We understand the fear. So how do we move forward? Ross Ellenhorn doesn't offer some tidy 10-step plan. Instead, he offers something much more radical and much more real. Compassion, not just for others, but for yourself. Because if you want to change, truly change, it starts here, by letting go of the shame, by understanding the why behind the stuckness, by offering yourself patience instead of punishment. And then, one small step at a time, you begin. Not because you've fixed yourself, not because you're finally enough, but because you already are. How We Change and 10 Reasons Why We Don't isn't just a book. It's a mirror, a flashlight, a quiet hand on your shoulder saying, hey, it's okay, let's take this slow. So wherever you are on your journey, starting over, stuck in the middle, or afraid to begin, know this. Change is possible. It is hard, yes, but it is possible. And more importantly, you don't have to do it perfectly. You just have to begin. If this resonated with you, take a moment, leave a comment, share your story, or even just write down one thing you're ready to let go of. Because the first step in change is believing it's allowed. And it is. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.